like to call to order the Town of Shelburne Development Review Board meeting for Wednesday, March 4th. And would like to first invite anybody in the public to please sign in to document your attendance. And then also open up for any public comment for any items that are not on the agenda. Any comments from the public? Okay. Hearing none, we shall move on to approval of the minutes. I'll ask my colleagues on the board, any comments,
I make a motion.
revisions?
I make a motion, we accept them as written.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? No nays? Minutes approved. Okay, next item. Any disclosures from any board members related to any potential conflicts of interest on any of the topics tonight? Okay, hearing none. Any members of the public aware of any potential conflicts of interest of the board members? Okay, hearing none. Move to the next item, which is application DR 20-02, application by Adam Hanna for design review approval to convert one bay of an existing two-car garage into a mudroom. Property at 1023 Falls Road is located in the Shelburne Falls Mixed Use District, Village Design Review Overlay District, and Stormwater Overlay District. And we do, and so, Brittany, we usually start off with a comment from you, and before we do so, we'll swear you in. Okay. Do you swear or affirm that the evidence you give in the cause under consideration shall be the whole truth and nothing but the truth under the pains and penalties of perjury?
I do.
Okay, so take it away, fill us in.
Sure. Mr. Hanna, he showed up at the HPDRC meeting on February 27th, and I was actually able to attend that, so I got to see sort of the process. As you explained, he is hoping to take and convert one of his garage bays into a mudroom. And there were a few exterior changes to that which triggered the need for a DRC, a window and a door on the reverse side. And I think it was very well revered by the DRC. They approved it with the condition that he installed the door that he submitted in with his application. Besides that, they didn't have really any further comments on it.
Mm-hmm.
So, if
Okay.
you would like to.
Ms. Hanna? Okay, welcome, and I'd like to swear you in. Do you swear or affirm that the evidence you give in the cause under consideration shall be the whole truth and nothing but the truth under the pains and penalties of perjury?
I do.
Okay, anything you'd like us to know?
No, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. There's no change to the size or shape of the existing structure. It's currently two single bay garages. They're separated in the middle, so there's already, we're just converting the interior space, replacing the garage door that's closed there with a window and door, and on the back side a sliding French door.
Okay. Comments, question from the board?
I'm just confirming that you're fine with the requirement that was suggested that they have the lights shown at the top of the drawing on the French sliding door, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Any comments, questions from the public? Okay, seeing none, do we have any motions?
Certainly. I would make a motion to grant design review approval to Adam Hanna to convert this one bay of an existing two-car garage to a mudroom and laundry space with the following conditions. The French-style sliding door will have divided lights at the top as shown on the submitted photograph. And 2, that a zoning permit shall be obtained prior to starting construction.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Okay, see no nays? Approved. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, next item, application sub 9007 R2, application by Engineering Ventures on behalf of Webster Road LLC. care of James Collins for sketch plan review for residential re-subdivision. Proposed division would create 7th lot from the original parent parcel, where 6 currently exist. The property is at 59 Webster Road, is located in the residential district and stormwater overlay district. Brittany?
I think you covered most of it with the description. The Borgia Lane subdivision originally came in front of the board in 2005 for 6 lots. I think this lot in question was previously Lot 3, and they're hoping to subdivide and put up a residence on the newly created lot. I made staff comments throughout. Most of them are just really typical of what's next in the preliminary stage anyway. They had everything they needed for sketch, but it was just sort of, okay, next time you come in, these are the criteria that we're gonna be looking at. And most of them had to do, I think, with like questions about whether stormwater permitting was gonna be required, because it is part of a previous subdivision. I had some question about acreage, and I think other than that, I will let them go ahead and just talk about the project.
Okay. Kevin?
Certainly can.
Okay, Kevin, do you swear or affirm that the evidence you give in the cause under consideration shall be the whole truth and nothing but the truth under the pains and penalties of perjury?
I do.
Okay.
I'm Kevin Warden with Engineering Ventures, representing the Collins and on behalf of Beth and Marcus here, who would move into the house in the lot that's being subdivided. And I do have plans that I can, oh, there we go, great, yeah. So that's a good overall view of the existing parcels as they currently stand. There are 3 that front on Webster Road, and the one in the lower left-hand corner is the one that Beth and Marcus live in now. And there are 3 towards the rear, which are accessed by Borgia Lane. The subject lot is the one in the lower left-hand corner, which is around an acre and 1.25, little over an acre. And if you pan down even one more, that's an enlargement of that lot. And as you can see, the proposed subdivision takes the rear 2/3 of that lot. The front existing house remains on a portion of the remaining lot, which is about 0.51 acres. And the new lot towards the back is the remaining land and where the house is proposed off of Borgia Lane. And really beyond that, the staff comments were very good, very thorough. One of the questions was related to stormwater. We did do a calculation on all of the impervious, which we can certainly submit for the existing and proposed, and it's under 1 acre. It's 38,000 square feet, and an acre is 43,560. So a state stormwater permit is not required at this time. I know there might be some town requirements, but before preliminary, we'll review that with stormwater, the fire chief, police, etc. I think one comment that does warrant some discussion, or would love to hear some input from the board, is whether this is classified as a street, and if so, whether some sort of pedestrian access would be desired or required. That would be under comment or condition 9.
Yep.
I do want to offer that this definition of street in the subdivision regulations is, if I can find it, just pull this.
Oh, okay, I've got it here.
Do you? Okay, here. I've got it as well.
You got it? Okay, found it.
Yeah. Any road, highway, avenue, street, land, or other way between right-of-way lines commonly used by the public for vehicular traffic. And as staff points out, Borgia Lane is a dead end. There are currently 3 houses. This will be the 4th. So according to the folks that live there, there really is no public access. Folks don't no one drives up Borgia Lane for public access, so we would question whether it is, does meet the definition of a street.
Comments, questions from board?
Oh, okay.
Just in general, I might start up. Okay, I did have one question, I guess, Brittany. So one of our things that we're supposed to decide here is whether this is a minor or major subdivision. So if we go to,
Yes, I recommended it
staff
be
rep-
classified as a major
Yeah.
because it's a re-subdivision.
Right.
So anytime we open the book on something that was previously approved by our board here, the lot count continues. And it also gives the board sort of the ability to review the whole subdivision, like, once they come in for another lot. So it sort of opens the can of worms. So it's good.
I didn't understand your comment. I don't know if you're able to put our report on, but I
Yeah.
guess if, these numbers on the page, so it'll be 1, 2, 3, on page 4.
Okay.
Towards the top of the page. Under Town Subdivision, the second paragraph, under Town Subdivision Regulation, Article 2, the definition of a minor subdivision is any land vacant or improved which is divided or proposed to be divided into 2 or more lots. So when I read that, it sounds like if you're dividing something into 2 or more lots, it's to be considered as a minor subdivision?
And it would have been, but the term amended subdivision and re-subdivisions also shows up in the definition of a subdivision. So the way this was warned and the way I understood it when I came on board was because this came in front of the Planning Commission in 2005, the lot count continues. They already had 6 lots, so this is creating a 7th, which means it's a major.
And that was a major subdivision then?
Yes.
Well, it still would.
I wonder if
Yeah,
there's a
no, but I mean,
typo. I
so
see what
Yeah,
you're seeing,
there's something,
David.
it doesn't read right.
I mean, we don't,
If I was following that by,
maybe that's supposed to say
Yeah.
major, but
Maybe
we
that should just
concur
say
that
major,
it's a major. I mean,
Okay.
it's,
I was
it's
just,
one
Yeah,
lot,
it's
but
probably a type, yeah, it's probably
Um,
something left over or.
I just want to read these, I like to make sure they're correct, because it's part of record, and it just seems like if I was following that by the way it reads, then I'd have to say this is a minor subdivision.
Well, this isn't the whole,
Yeah,
It's
we're
not
missing
the whole-
part of the,
yeah,
Yeah,
this is
It's not the
just
whole
a
part.
chunk of it.
it's an excerpt.
and then that brings up a second question, so I went to my subdivision
congratulations.
regulations here, and I may not have the most current copy. What's our current copy, Rev, do you know? I have 2016.
I was given on my first day, last week, 2016.
2016. Okay.
So,
Yeah.
Is the 7 acres the extent of what can be subdivided here? The 7 buildings, is that? I'm trying to get a context for what we're doing.
Well, they're dividing, mechanically, Smokey, they're dividing 1 lot, but that creates the 7th lot in the subdivision.
But are there more potentially that can be divided then?
I don't know. Are there any other dividable lots in that subdivision? That they are, they're not in front of us, though.
I understand that, I'm just trying to get some context.
Yeah, I think conceivably there are other lots, the minimum lot size is a half acre.
Interesting.
Okay.
So if there's any lot that's over an acre,
It could be
it could be
subdivided.
subdivided, given that there's like
Yeah,
frontage
those ones-
requirements and other requirements as well.
Right.
Sure, and the reason I asked that question, I should have prefaced it with, I'm going back, well, they're talking about the subdivision, I'm going back to the conversation about the sidewalk.
Right.
Because it's hard to envision what would happen, and I know we're only looking at this, I'm acknowledging that, but, okay.
condition, existing condition and demo? Yeah.
There's really no demolition.
Okay, all right. I
That's
didn't
kind of
see
a
any on
standard
here. I was
term that
just
we use.
Curious, I thought I'd ask.
Yeah, no, there's no demolition.
Gotcha, thank you.
It's, the actual construction is very straightforward. It's right off of Borgia Lane, so
Yeah, I
they're, thanks.
didn't know if you had a little shed out there or something that was gonna come down.
The sidewalk issues come up on other applications. And that is on streets that currently exist as streets. So how do we define, do we have any,
Well, they
Mark,
are-
any history about definition of a dead-end road as a street?
Well, it would have to because Maple Leaf Lane is going through that now.
Right.
That's a dead-end road, and they're doing sidewalks in front of the Precourt property.
Right, just
Well, that's also a street that's been adopted by the town.
the town
Town
takes it.
plows your road, right?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So this is a private
This is
road.
really a private, it's a private way.
Yeah.
Oh, this is a private way.
So
Right.
the issue is whether or not there is, this street is used by the quote-unquote public. And there are two ways of looking at that word. One is meaning anybody. The other is meaning people that don't live there. Almost by definition, because it's a dead-end street, no one but the people that live there and any people making deliveries to them is gonna use it. There's not through traffic,
Right,
you know, on a dead-end street.
okay,
Is that a fair summary?
That's correct, yeah.
okay.
So if it is determined as a street, then we have to discuss the sidewalk, right?
Right, but if it's not a
Not
street
street, we
because it's
don't.
not publicly used, then the sidewalk requirement goes away and doesn't need to be discussed.
Okay.
Maybe advantageous to make a notation of that for future as well.
So, Mr. Chairman, we're trying to, do we have anything that we need to, how do we decide whether it's a street or not? By vote, I assume, but
Well,
any,
this is sketch plan, so actually, we're just giving comments
Okay.
for the next plans. We're not gonna,
oh, good.
and you know, approving, the approval here is just an administrative process approval.
Right.
We're not
right.
actually blessing anything.
Okay.
This is just a feedback session, so that when we get to preliminary and final, that there won't be a lot of time wasted by the applicant coming forward with things that we're concerned about.
But whether it's a street or not will make a difference to the application going forward.
Whether it's a street or not will make a difference as to whether or not we have to address the sidewalk
Right.
issue. If it's not considered a street, we don't need to address the sidewalk issue.
Right, so
And
when does that get decided?
Well, formalistically, it gets decided at preliminary when we vote to approve it or not. Right now, we're just giving them feedback.
Okay.
There are no substantive approvals happening.
No, I'm just trying to, I mean, in terms of our process and their process, it,
But it might be useful, Brittany, and of course, I would hope that you would share anything you learned with the applicant so that they're not surprised when they come back for a preliminary. If there's clear precedent or past practice with respect to dead ends aren't streets because there's no through traffic, that would be helpful.
yes,
I haven't been on the board long enough to have a view on that one way or the other, I don't know.
or vice
Let me
versa.
ask a couple other questions if I can. Just, I'm looking at the definition of street, and I apologize because I was actually looking at, before this, I was looking at the major versus minor subdivision rules here. So that road, I won't say street right
Lane.
now, lane,
Borgia Lane,
Path.
yeah?
is that maintained by the town at all?
No,
So it is a private road. So if it's a private road, is there any right-of-way established on either side of that road that you typically find on a state or town-owned road?
there is a right-of-way, and it's a 35-foot right-of-way. So if you look in the regs, the town typically requires 60. But, you know, the road and the right-of-way and the lots at the rear have been there for long enough that it predates, either predates the regs or previous boards did not require anything wider.
Okay. So then the remaining question then, is it commonly used by the public for vehicular traffic?
Correct, that's what we were discussing
Commonly-
earlier.
yeah.
And the argument is a dead end can't be commonly used by the public because no one but the residents, their guests and deliveries to them uses it. And the other argument is no, public means anybody, and therefore, yes, even a dead end is a public street. And that impels us to address the sidewalk issue. And what I had suggested to Brittany earlier, because Mark may have been around long enough to remember if this issue's come up before, but I certainly haven't. If between now and this coming back for preliminary, you discover some past practice one way or the other, in addition to being prepared to share that with the board, if you could share it with the applicants so that there's no time wasted and everyone understands what the issue is formed as.
I can't recall where we've required on a private way, that's what I'm calling this, where we would require somebody to put a sidewalk improvement in here. If, you know, yeah, I just don't think, I mean, theoretically, a hypothetical, if these folks wanted to, you know, put a gate and a no trespassing sign at the end of their road,
They
they
could do
could
it.
do that. So anybody really who drives up this road is is a person that's uninvited to the property.
Right.
I mean, what's the legal term for that, John? And
I'm perfectly,
uninvited,
yeah, I'm perfectly
person,
comfortable
so-
semantically with taking the position a dead-end street isn't, a dead-end lane isn't a street for these purposes. I'm just saying I don't know what I don't know about past practice.
yeah, and I think that, given the fact that this is not a town-maintained road, that I see no compelling reason to require them to do that.
I would agree unless there was some demonstrated precedence, but.
Yep,
Can't
So
think
we'll
of,
wait
I
for the
can't think
next-
of anything.
yep.
So when you say it's not maintained, meaning the town
Town,
doesn't plow
yeah,
it, they
right.
don't grade it, they don't
They
do
don't
anything?
allow it,
no.
and
Got it,
Um,
understood.
I'm not, you know, you start to get in, it gets a little messy as to who owns the sewer and water infrastructure, but, you know, they've been given a prescriptive easement to come in there and repair anything in that right of way, and I'm sure there's sewer easements, I think I saw them in these other pages, so,
They're in there.
you know, they've got the ability to come in and maintain, but it's still a private road, so.
Okay.
I don't see really where we have jurisdiction on that.
Yep.
My opinion.
So, there's are we finished with this part, the street, the road, the sidewalk?
Yeah, I am.
Yep.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I have a question. So there's a comment you made in here about the significance of the swale in terms of drainage. What did you mean by that?
If you could speak to it a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, so you can see the line that cuts from north to the south, right there, yep. That's an existing swale. It's been there. The Borgia Lane crosses it, and there's a culvert underneath, and it's just a low point on the property, so water does drain from the east and west to that location and then towards the south. There's really no more significance. It's a natural swale. It's not created to treat stormwater, and really nothing this project's doing should impact it.
Okay.
And there's no grade changes around the building envelope that are gonna be made?
Not significantly. I mean, I think during preliminary, we'll show some grade elevations as required, but, you know, there might be a little bit of fill because I think there'll be a basement, so, you know, probably windows around the basement and so forth, but we can specify that in preliminary.
Yeah, and more just to make sure that it doesn't impact the flow going into that
No.
swale.
Yeah, if you go to the next, the C 1.3, you can see that the swale's over to the right and the house is over to the left or to the east. So it's a good distance away, located in the high point.
Right, everything goes.
Right.
Nope.
That's all I had, yeah.
Solicit a motion from the board.
I'll make a motion to, firstly, to classify this as a major subdivision, and for the secretary's purposes, I'm adopting verbatim the language in the staff report, so if I'm skipping over some words, that's by design. I'd also move to finalize the record and close the hearing at this stage in the process. And I move to direct staff to prepare a decision authorizing Engineering Ventures PC in behalf of Webster Road LLC to prepare a primary plan review application for two-lot subdivision with the recommendations listed, which include obtaining comments from the water quality superintendent regarding stormwater management pursuant to town regulations 800 sub 4, relevant information regarding site grading, fill, and cutting pursuant to 810 sub 2, state issued project review sheet with preliminary plan review pursuant to bylaw section 530, site plan information with respect to erosion protection sediment control measures pursuant to section sub 975 of the subdivision regulations, and the applicant should provide review letters from the concerned town departments or agencies under subdivision regulation 600 sub 28. That is the motion.
Did you ask, just say, did you ask for comments from the public, just to make sure?
I did not, but
I can suspend my motion if anyone
No,
wants to
no,
make a
I
comment.
just wanted to make sure.
It's a good catch.
Okay,
did not. I assume not because,
they're here.
Really isn't anybody other than the applicant, so.
okay, but thank you. Okay, so we have the motion, seconded, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Nays? No nays? Seeing none?
Just trying to disappear. Thank you very much.
Okay, our next item was withdrawn, so there's no action there. So now we're on other business. I had a few things I just wanted to bring up real quickly. For all the board members, there are terms of us that are expiring, and I noticed there's some inconsistencies between what I saw on the web page, which indicated everybody's term was expiring except for mine and Doug's, but versus what's in the town report, it's significantly different. So I don't know what's what. Maybe you could clarify, Brittany? Yes, we are.
Well, I talked to Lee about this issue, and he said basically it was at some point poor record keeping, so they had extended everyone a year.
Okay,
And
thank you very much.
so in order to clean this up, he said he had reached out to board members with expired terms, and
Yes.
it seemed like everyone that was expiring did express interest in being reappointed.
Okay,
And they plan on doing that at their next select board meeting next week.
okay.
So I'll,
What does that mean? There's no way, so, okay, so I was one of the people, well, obviously we were all reached out to. And they asked me if I wanted to stay another year, but I think I was a 2-year term, and I only joined the board in April.
Yeah.
So I got it on the record keeping, and it's fine, I'm just letting you know. It was just, like, extending me a year takes me to where I think I was.
I understand what you're saying, yeah. He was hoping that
Maybe farther.
afterwards we could.
say wrong record keeping, he said bad record keeping.
Did I? Okay, well, I stand corrected. I'm just sharing with you that I was, because I had the same confusion. I went and looked at my records and looked at the website, and I was like, oh, okay, well, whatever.
There is a massive project going on to clean up all the boards and the record keeping, so
I'm
he
sure
did
there
ask
is.
me
I'm happy to help you if you
yeah,
need it.
meet with you guys afterwards and sort of get
Yeah.
when everyone started and when you're expiring.
Okay,
from.
so that's,
So that's a
we're
to-do
good,
then?
and so everybody's reapplied and will be reappointed at the next select board meeting.
Correct.
He didn't reach out to me, so must be I'm not
You're never
expiring.
getting
off.
I'm done.
Your grandfather.
You were 2021, apparently.
Am I? Okay, good.
Well, on the webpage, I think you were expiring.
Okay.
Trying to get rid of him for years.
Anyway, so, okay, so that's good.
I'm not planning on expiring right away, but I might.
So, I had three things. So the second item I wanted to talk about was, and this applicant, we were just kind of segue into this. It seems like on a regular basis, we're always talking about sidewalks. And I remember
we are.
quite a while ago, we talked about it might be reasonable for us to either approach select board or planning commission to talk about, the issues with what we're faced here when it comes time for us to make a decision on sidewalks or not, because the definition isn't particularly helpful in guiding us how to go with things. So I wanted to see if folks still felt that we might want to talk to somebody about that. Where should we go?
Were you on the board when Kate Lally came and spoke with us?
Yes, I was.
So, I have to go back and watch that. My recollection was that we asked her for a handful of items, like, to try to help us see where the town stands on this and to figure this out. What's the long-term plan? Is there a global plan around the town to implement sidewalks? Are we putting it on the west side of Spear Street or the east side of Spear Street, or from here to here? Is it they want to have it on the west side of Spear Street, for example? But anyways, as I recall, we kind of left her with a laundry list of things to get back to us with, and to my knowledge, we haven't seen anything come back, so.
No, and I think it was a while ago, 6 months ago, or maybe more. A
I
year
think
or
it was
so.
longer than that.
It was a while ago.
It was some time ago, I'm gonna say
Yeah.
at least a year ago, I can't recall, but, so I kind of think that before we could certainly talk to the planning commission, but I think we need to get some of that information back, before and see where they're at with their,
Well,
They're-
when they
they're-
conceived of all this form-based stuff,
yeah.
were there guidelines embedded in that?
Well, I mean, most of the time that we've talked about sidewalk, we've only heard a couple of form-based code, applications.
But they did include sidewalks.
But
It was part of the
sidewalks
form.
were a part of the discussion, but, and, this form-based code area is limited.
Fair enough, yeah.
And you have, most of the discussions we've had regarding sidewalks have been out of the form-based code
Okay.
area.
Very, very small subdivisions like this, and,
Well, yeah,
Or the one where we did the site visit, where we would be requiring a sidewalk.
That
to
was
first
that
to
was
The
nowhere.
my-
sidewalk to,
that was
we've been
my-
on a
So-
couple of those missions, a sidewalk to nowhere.
And then the
Right.
last time when we decided they didn't need two sidewalks, remember that conversation?
Right.
So maybe the question is, do they want us to keep being arbitrary? Or
Well,
are there
I'd
guidelines?
rather not.
Well, no,
So the process issue is what are the actual rules? I have a pretty clear recollection of Ravi when I tried to talk this out or listen this out in his office. He said there were 3 sets of rules. There was form-based rules, which applies very narrowly. There were rules that said that the DRB could waive sidewalks.
Right.
But there were other rules in other settings that did not give us the authority to waive the sidewalks. And the rules, at least as written, clearly said the sidewalks were required. And if there's an easy explanation of where those 3 buckets are, 2 buckets, put the form-based aside. I don't recall that. Ravi never got into that level of detail with me, but he cautioned me before I basically walked out of the room thinking that we could decide what to do with sidewalks, that there were 2 parts of the world. There was a part where we had the discretion to do that, and there was a part where we had no discretion, at least the way the rules were written.
Do you know what decides which part?
No.
then? Okay.
The way our conversation ended is because I said, you gotta help explain this to me. He says, don't worry, in any report that has a non-waivable requirement, I will say in the staff report, it's a non-waivable requirement. So we're gonna blame Brittany for everything that goes wrong.
So Brittany, you need to tell us.
But I think in the interest of the town in making making good decisions, and 2, making it easier for the applicants and their engineers to
Absolutely.
determine what they're gonna do, I think.
Absolutely.
I think we need to,
I'd love to
we
get
need to
that clear.
discuss it, we need to work with the planning commission if they're willing to. And then,
Didn't I just read that there was a hearing a month ago that, maybe it's a little longer than that they were actually going to discuss that issue? In the planning commission? Planning-
I saw sidewalks on the agenda, but I don't recall the
I
context.
didn't get any answer out of it, I just saw it on the agenda.
Should we reach out to
Who's the
planning
chair?
commission
I
chair?
think we should. I think we need clarity on it, because the others, and I don't even know how to think about this, but so there's this, a utility coming in, to the stormwater utility. And like, if there's a right of way and you're forced to put a sidewalk in, you're adding more,
Yes.
you're changing the,
Impervious, yeah.
Impervious
There's a lot
surface.
there's a lot, I mean, that's a little bit of a nuance, but
Well,
Yeah, because what we're faced with is, you know, you can certainly understand the intent of the planning commission, but when it comes here to execution, I think we're seeing that it's not
clear.
not really,
It's a
you
practicality
can't
issue.
apply, kind of that rule to everything that's out there.
and we have to be able to do that.
And we have to be able to do that. There has to be alternate ways of,
For
meeting
me,
the
if,
intent.
let's just say we were hearing something similar to what we saw up on Spear Street, and, you know, there was in the town plan, there was okay, this is where we wanna ultimately see sidewalks and pedestrian ways. Okay, then
Yep.
we would require a developer or, you know, an applicant who's improving their land to get the ball rolling and build a sidewalk, but, you know, there wasn't any clear
right. there's
document that I know of that's
No
out there.
master sidewalk plan that we
Right.
work with, so.
Most towns have a plan that if, you know, when there is construction or change in a particular area, the sidewalk is part of the master plan and it will go into place. The person doing the change will pay for that.
Yep.
And over time, town may come along and finish doing
Fill in the
sidewalks,
blanks,
but
yep.
Blanks,
it'd be nice to know that.
Or you can have like an impact fee, so instead of requiring a little piece of sidewalk that goes from nowhere to nowhere.
Yeah, 100
contribute
feet
to
in front
the
of the
bucket,
house, right?
And then that bucket's used to
Do sidewalks.
Yeah.
do sidewalks.
I think it's worth asking,
Yep.
because even that whole conversation about people complaining where the sidewalk was, that there was no curb.
Right.
I mean, I don't wanna,
Yeah.
this has scope creep all over it, but
Right.
like,
It does, but it's,
Oh, yeah.
it keeps coming up,
it's
so
in
I
the
thought we
same
should.
category of lack of in my mind, is that, the whole stormwater question.
Mhm.
The minimizing the stormwater.
Right.
Minimizing impervious
Minimize,
areas.
right.
It's a trade-off, and where do you,
Where do you draw the line?
And
right.
who,
There's also language
makes
in
that
there,
choice?
I believe there's language in there that talks about, or other means of pedestrian traffic.
All right, there is.
There's, I can't
Right.
remember the exact language,
Other,
but
yeah, other alternate means, but.
Slightly
For
wider
example,
gravel road.
when the Rice lumber project was heard numerous times because they forgot to
Wow.
file some plats, but, in that case, the road was made wider, and there's a delineated pedestrian path with signage up and down,
Yep. As opposed to a separate
as
paved
opposed to a
concrete
separate
sidewalk.
concrete sidewalk with curbing and so forth,
Outside of
so.
the form-based zones, have there been staff comments on the sidewalks in the previous ones you've seen?
Yeah.
Yes, that's
And-
what
and-
precipitated my conversation with
And
Robbie.
they're vague.
I didn't understand why in one case we were told we could waive it, and then in a later case, it said the regs require a sidewalk. And I said, well, what answer is right? And the answer was both. There are two rules, putting form base aside. There some areas it can be waived, others it can't. I don't know where
It has
those
to do
areas
with
are.
whether, I believe there's, whether or not it's a PUD comes into play.
Could be,
Yep.
could be.
I can't recall, but
Yeah.
it's definitely a piece of the zoning regulations that needs to
And,
be
you know, if you
tightened up a little bit.
take a moment sometime just to like read the little paragraph here
Yeah, I will.
and then you can like say, so how are we gonna deal with that? It makes it tough. Even here, it's like, so, ooh, what's a street? You're looking at each word, you know, and how does it work?
That reminds me of the definition of is.
Okay,
Um,
so, as far as
There's a third.
going to the planning commission, what's the mechanism for that? I just,
Probably
get a hold of them or go through staff?
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I
I-
know sidewalks are being discussed. We were just talking about them at my Public Works meeting that I attended last week, so I know it's a topic that's already being
Yep.
brought up by other departments as
Okay,
well.
so it's probably appropriate time to
Yes,
do that. Okay,
Yeah.
so I'll send something off to Dean, I guess, and
Yeah.
you and,
and I'll reiterate our conversation. I actually had to ask Dean when I came up to that section of the regulations, what does this mean? Because I'm obviously looking at this with fresh eyes.
yeah.
And that's when he gave me the
2 hours
definition of
later.
street. Yeah, look up a definition of street. Is it a used public, by the public? And
Yeah.
then that's sort of where he left it off with me, and that's where I went with it.
So there's no definition of public as a subset.
Correct.
We could use that.
And I don't think you can just use the dead end piece, because I can think of like streets that, or ways, well, clearly that's a street. Whereas you look at this and like, well, nah.
It might be worth your while to just, we had a good conversation, with Kate, and I think it might be worthwhile to see if you could flip back through the minutes and see when she was in attendance at our meeting. I'm gonna say it was a
Might have
year.
been like a year ago.
I'd say a year or so ago, and maybe watch that, that particular segment of that meeting, and I think you'll, that's where it was left with the planning commission or a representative of the planning commission. I don't think we've heard anything since.
Just to kind of summarize where we are, though, I think because we're not at a stage yet where we, the DRB, are going to tell the planning commission, geez, we think you should change this or at least discuss it. It seems to me, since we're at the information gathering stage, that Brittany is the logical way to handle the communication.
Yes.
And then once we have that information about, that more complete information about where things stand, at that point, maybe we'll have a view that we disagree with the approach or are confused by some aspect of the approach. And at that point, then I would think the chair or vice chair as the spokesman for the board might be an appropriate communication channel, because Brittany will just become a ping pong ball bouncing back and forth between us and planning. But at this point, it's information gathering, so I think.
I think for me, I mean, I think the ball's in their court.
Right.
Based on that meeting. Certainly be glad to go back and refresh it and try to condense it down to what we're looking for, but I think the end of that, where there was a pretty clear message and a laundry list of things we were looking to hear back from them on, so.
Okay.
Was there a third item?
Yeah, thirdly, I thought it would be nice with Brittany here, if we could just do a real quickie, everybody introduce themselves and let them know who you are and how you love serving on the DRB and all that kind of good stuff.
Oh, I get to start.
Start with you, sure.
Okay. Well, I'm Brittany, and my family comes from Charlotte, and they've been there for like 100 years. But I originally started out there as the zoning board coordinator, and then I went to McCain Consulting, which is a civil engineering firm, and did all their permitting work for them, so their state and local permitting. And I got to work in 50 different towns in the 4 years I was there, so.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very good.
And now I'm in Shelburne. It's a lot closer commute than Waterbury.
All right, well, welcome.
Thanks.
Zeke Plant, and this is my first year. I just started on the board in February.
Mike Major, I've been here since April last year. Ian and I came on at the same time. I've been a resident of Shelburne 30 years now.
I'm Marc Salmon. I've been on the board for, I think, about 12 years now, positive. Served as chair, vice chair, clerk, all those things. And I've lived here for 27 years. Been in the area a lot longer than that. I had an office in Shelburne, so I'm pretty familiar with, and done a lot of work in town, so I'm kind of familiar with how things have changed in the last almost 40 years, so, yeah, welcome aboard.
Okay. I'm Dave. I have been on the board for 2 years, going into my third year now. Resident of Shelburne for around 35 years. I work up at the hospital. I manage the facilities, construction, renovation type work there. Let's see, what else can I tell you? Oh, my hobbies. I love old Mustangs. And I've worked with Dean in the past on a couple other kind of projects, like researching ancient roads in Shelburne, which was fascinating. And served on the Natural Resource Committee for a while.
We really actually went through this exercise just before the meeting, but John Day, I've been in town for 3 years. I've been on the board for two plus years, and occupied a similar role in Connecticut for 12 years. And I'm learning as I go along.
I'm Doug, and we said hi before the meeting. I've been on the board, I think, a year and a half, if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember when.
Seems so much longer.
It has, yeah.
But don't take it personally.
I'm not yet, till I don't get reassigned, renewed, and then I know it's been too long. And I've been in construction in this kind of field my whole life, so, but I'm retired, so I have plenty of time to think about these things.
I'm Ann, and I've lived here full-time for 2 years, but we've had property here for about 7 years.
7?
Yeah, so I have the luxury of living literally on the town line. So I live partially in Charlotte and partially in Shelburne. This is the first time I've ever served on a board, full-time for many years. I do some the business of healthcare advisory work now. And so I decided it was time to give back to the community I live in. And I've learned a lot about Shelburne just doing this, so I think it's a lot of fun.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
And welcome.
Okay, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.